Hi everybody, Jeremy Siskind here. I'm the author of Playing Solo Jazz Piano, the author of Jazz Piano Fundamentals, and the author of the Solo Standards for Piano series. This is all available at jeremysiskind.com at a great deal. I mean, we're practically giving these books away. That's not true, but the deals are great. You'll enjoy the books. Hop on over to jeremysiskind.com to get them. And so today, it's probably not going to be my most popular video. I get a lot of clicks when I do a video about a certain scale or a certain chord progression or something like that. This is about a very specific piece that you're probably never going to play, but it's a really fascinating and important piece in jazz history. I've been working on it lately, and I always love to share what I'm working on with you, my students, my beloved students, followers, subscribers. And so I want to bring you a little bit along with this journey. Along on this journey for me, with me. Why can't I do prepositions? Okay, so this piece is called Glass Enclosure, and it really is one of Bud Powell's most important compositions. I've done a little bit of historical research, and there's kind of two elements that this seems to be referring to historically. So the first is that we know that Bud Powell was in and out of sanatoriums to get psychological, psychiatric, I'm not exactly sure, treatment for a long time. So that's an enclosed space. But the actual specifics of the story about this piece seem to be that after he was released from a sanatorium, he was playing a long run at Birdland. And I don't know if it's because he wasn't trusted or if they were trying to protect him, but apparently the owner of Birdland kind of locked him in his apartment for a long period of time. And so I can't remember who, a really great jazz journalist went and visited Bud Powell, and he played this piece. And so this could be about his time in the sanatoriums, or it could be about his time locked in this apartment. It's kind of takes a one half dozen of another to a certain degree, right? He's locked in somewhere. So it's called Glass Enclosure, and it's such an interesting piece. So first of all, it's not just a lead sheet, not by any stretch of the imagination. It goes through various tempos, it goes through various styles, and if a student handed me this piece, I would get out some red ink and I would say, well, this section's too long, this section's too short, this chord, are you sure about it? He really kind of leans into some of these things that seem ill-advised. And I'll walk you through what I mean. And I'm not saying that to say it's a bad composition. In fact, I think some of those things are very descriptive, right? They are, they put into music some of what maybe Powell was going through, or maybe I'm imagining. So here's a little score for Glass Enclosure. It's going to be 3 or 4 pages. I can't quite remember, but it starts kind of as a march, and this is recorded as a trio. There's quite a few really nice solo piano recordings of it, including Benny Green has a really nice solo piano recording. But it sounds like this. And then wait for this part, and then we'll talk about it. Kind of haunting, right? So probably the biggest thing that you noticed about this first section is these two chords, which are repeated quite a bit. F over A flat, G flat over G. These are not consonant chords. Right? If you don't know what this means, it means an F triad with an A flat in the bass, or a G flat triad, with a G in the bass. So the melody of the chords is very consonant, but the chords beneath it is very dissonant. And it almost, there's a few moments where the glass element of the glass enclosure feels like something's getting refracted, right? Something's kind of changing how we view it. So we have this melody that should be harmonized, maybe, with very consonant chords, but instead, the sunlight gets refracted as it moves through the glass. And then I'm sure, you notice this very last section, which has, first of all, this weird counterpoint, which is designed to emphasize these dissonant moments. Right? The G sharp and A at the end both create dissonance. So he's finding these places of dissonance in the scale, and then it ends in this very mysterious chord, B major 7 over G. Or you could think of it as G augmented major 7th. Is that true? Yeah, but with a B flat in the melody, so not exactly. And then that chord moves up a half step after this really interesting. It's not exactly an augmented scale, I don't believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's a strange agglomeration of notes. From there, we go into a swing feel, and we get this cool melody. And that's a section that stops and starts. Now, I want to point, I know that went by fast, I want to point out a few things. First one is if we're listening for kind of typical phrasing, 8-bar phrases, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bars in a phrase, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe 11, 12-ish bars in a phrase. It's not your typical 8-bar phrasing. And he actually could have made it much more typical. He's setting up this thing where he's going down by whole steps here. But instead of continuing on, he goes down by half steps. And then goes back at the end to going down by whole steps. Super weird. Like, he had the perfect solution for a perfect phrase right in front of him. He chose not to take it. He chose to make it not even. Very purposeful. The other thing that's really strange is that the phrase basically repeats twice. This double bar line here is showing you that it repeats. The first time, he goes to the 4 chord. The second time, he doesn't go to the 4 chord. He just stays on a G over A flat 3 times, right? You might think, oh, it must have been a mistake in the recording, but he's playing with bass and drums. Like, that's not a mistake. Everybody's doing the same thing. So he's kind of choosing these unusual choices, these really unconventional choices that kind of make your hair stand straight. And maybe more obviously here is the fact that our chords here all have the flat 2 in the bass. So it could have been right, just a G7. But no, it's G over A flat. And then, not only is that A flat or G sharp in the chord, but it's also in the melody. The flat 2 is a really strange note to be using here. It kind of has a gypsy kind of sound to it or something. So he's making strange, unusual, unconventional choices all throughout. That leads into this section that I really think of as kind of an oasis. If you listen to the original recording, the bass bows. And Bud Powell uses some pedal. And it goes into this little march here. I'll pause there. So, kind of interesting. The weirdest thing about this march section is, well, let's count the measures. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Another 10-bar phrase. So unusual phrasing. And again, he didn't have to, right? Look at how many times he repeats the melody. B flat, G flat, A flat. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in a row, the same group of 3 melody notes. Now, granted, the bass and the chords do change underneath, so that makes it interesting. But 5 times is a lot. Usually there's kind of a 3-time rule in music, right? You do something 3 times and then you move on. So this is pretty unusual. And then this is probably the weirdest part, this final section before we transition back. So some of the things we saw before, we're seeing counterpoint, contrary motion between the melody and the bass. You can see the melody is going up, the bass is going down, strange scale. We are also having these kind of dissonant contrapuntal moments. E chord with an with an E sharp. Not something I would usually encourage my students to write. And similarly here, bass is going down, melody is going up. And this F7 flat 9 chord, that's not such a weird chord for jazz, but given that it's surrounded by all these triads, that F sharp really has this dissonant feel to it. After that, the piece does a DS al fine. And so I think I will play this full thing for you and let you hear the whole version of Glass Enclosure. And let's see. I'm going to try to do it without super being disruptive with page turns. Wish me luck here. that's a pretty special piece, right? It's haunting. It's constantly interesting. It's constantly changing. Check out the original recording. My version definitely is not the definitive version. If you'd like to play things that sound a little bit more like normal jazz, let me recommend to you Solo Standards for Piano. You can check it out at jeremysiskind.com, amazon.com, wherever the finest of books are sold. Thanks for watching.